Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's great to have you all here. I had a few days off from work last week and had all these big plans to record, or at least write up a few stories, but as so often happens, work and family things came up and I find myself behind once again. Today though, I'm covering a story I first saw in 60 Minutes Australia. If you don't watch 60 Minutes Australia, I highly recommend it. They cover a ton of scareful type stories, and the reporters all have Australian accents, and who doesn't love an Australian accent? I only have a fairly boring Midwest accent, although most of us in the Midwest would claim it's everyone else who has an accent and not us. I'm getting off track though, so on to the story of a missing husband and wife and their 2-year-old daughter who was found roaming the streets of Cancun, Mexico. Tahnee Shanks, an Australian native living in Mexico, was 32 years old when she went missing on May 2nd, 2022. Her husband, Jorge Astudillo, was also missing, and their 2-year-old daughter, Adelynn, may be the only one who knows what happened to them. Tahnee grew up in Australia. She was struck with a bout of wanderlust when she turned 18. Tahnee decided that she wanted to travel the world. On social media, she described herself as a happy, hippie ginger ninja, meeting around the world one country at a time. She spent 18 months traveling through Europe and Asia, and then returned home to Australia, where she worked for a few years before hitting the road again. This time, she traveled to the United States, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia before finally settling in Mexico. There, Tahnee met and married Jorge. The couple lived in Cancun and had a daughter together. All three later moved to the city of Merida. All was not happy in paradise, however, and at some point, Tahnee learned that Jorge was cheating on her. Tahnee shared with friends that not only had he cheated, but that Jorge sometimes became verbally abusive, and she discovered that he was involved in what she termed shady activities. She began planning a move back to Australia for her and Addie. COVID-related travel restrictions made it harder than normal to return home, but Tahnee worked on getting passports and travel plans in order. She was due to return to Australia on June 22nd, 2022. WhatsApp messages sent from Tahnee to friends confirmed that she was fed up with Jorge's behavior. She texted friends about locking herself in Addie's room to avoid him, that Jorge wanted her out of the house, and that she had asked her family for money to try and leave Mexico sooner than she had originally planned. In one message, she wrote, "I've asked my dad for more money to be able to pay rent and live until I come home because I just can't be under his control anymore. He uses it against me and is very verbally abusive. I don't want to wait until it gets physical." Tahnee also sent messages with her husband's full name, telling friends to remember his name in case anything happened to her. Then, as if not wanting to really believe that was a possibility, she assured her friends that, "Not that anything will, but I just want to keep that as a backup." Despite calling Jorge a criminal and hinting at shady dealings, Tahnee never gave her friends or family details of the exact nature of his criminal activities. He had a conviction for selling fake vacation packages, but was Jorge involved in more than just vacation scams? With all this going on, it was a bit surprising that on May 1st, 2022, the family decided to take a trip to Cancun. That day, Tahnee spoke with her brother and sister-in-law. The following day, May 2nd, 2022, they checked out of the hotel. There is camera footage of their vehicle exiting the hotel at approximately 11:30 on May 2nd, and they turned in the direction to take them back to Merida. But instead of continuing on the road to Merida, the car makes a U-turn, heads back to Cancun, and then leaves the highway. What happens after that is unknown. Later that night, two things are found. The truck was found 25 miles from Cancun, burnt almost to the point of being unidentifiable. It had been burned from the inside out. And Addie, little 2-year-old Addie, was found wandering the streets of Cancun. A man who was near a church with his family was approached by a man warning him, saying, "Be careful, your little girl may cross the road and get hit by a car," talking about a little girl who was nearby. The man said that the little girl was not his daughter, and that's when the other man said that he would go around the church to look for the little girl's family, and if this man would just keep an eye on her, he would come back once he found them. The man then walked off, never to return. Worried Worried for Addie and the family that was missing their little girl, the man called the police and also snapped a picture of Addie, posting it to his Facebook account, hoping that somebody would recognize her. The picture went viral, and eventually it was seen by a family member who quickly alerted Tahnee's mother that her granddaughter had been found in Mexico with her mom and dad nowhere around. Tahnee's family rushed to Mexico to get Adelynn, and also they rushed there with the hope that they would find Tahnee. Their stay ended up being very short, however, with the family saying that Mexican authorities suggested they leave the country quickly. They returned to Australia almost immediately, leaving behind only hope that Tahnee would soon be found. In the months that have followed, neither Tahnee or Jorge have been heard from. Tahnee's family grows more and more frustrated as seemingly no progress has been made on what appears to be Tahnee's murder. The big question, of course, is what happened here. Was Tahnee the victim of domestic violence? Did Jorge go from being verbally abusive to physically abusive? If that was the case, could Jorge be hiding somewhere hoping to evade justice? Those who found Addie at the church in Cancun did not identify Jorge as the man who alerted them to Addie being there and who wandered off to look for her family never to return. But just because they didn't identify that man as Jorge doesn't mean it wasn't him. Could he have changed his appearance somewhere in the time between killing Tahnee and dropping Addie off? There is about an 8 to 9 hour gap of time between when the truck was last seen and when Addie was found. Could the witnesses have not wanted to identify somebody they suspected or knew to be involved in criminal activity? The burnt-out truck was found after Addie was found, so did Jorge drop her off at the church, drive away, burn the truck, and then hitch or arrange for a ride away? Or did someone have a grudge against Jorge and they took it out on both him and Tahnee? Was the pair killed as payback for Jorge's involvement in some kind of criminal activity? Tahnee has been cleared of any involvement in any criminal activity, but the state attorney general in Mexico has stated that there is some evidence to suggest Jorge may have been a member of a cartel. He added that Jorge had been threatened with harm in the past to the point of being fearful for his safety and hiring a bodyguard to try and protect himself. Investigators have questioned if the couple perhaps made the U-turn and returned to Cancun, eventually leaving the highway because they were being followed. Were they trying to evade someone? Others have spotted what they think is a clue in one of the pictures of Addie that was posted on Facebook when her identity was still unknown. If you look closely at the picture, Adelynn appears to have a bit of blood on her pinky finger. Her family says that she appears to have not ever had an injury to her finger, so if the blood isn't hers, then whose is it? No one seems to know, and no one also seems to know what happened to the clothes Addie was wearing that day. Her family thinks that DNA testing on the clothes could provide clues to what happened to Tahnee and Jorge, and also clues as to who harmed them. Despite hope growing dim, Tahnee's mother told 60 Minutes Australia about a month after her daughter's disappearance, "The last few days, I've had this renewed feeling. I can't understand it. I would have felt it if she were gone. I know that sounds silly to some people, but that is how I feel. It gives me a bit of hope, I guess. She's my baby, my youngest. I hope we get her back." Authorities in Mexico continue to investigate Tahnee and Jorge's disappearance, and they consider both of them to still be alive and to be victims until there is evidence that indicates otherwise. Tahnee's friends and family say that she was never separated from Addie and that there was no way she would have voluntarily left her. Friends also say that Tahnee was always on social media, and so once her postings stopped, they became worried for her safety. Tahnee's brother is offering $70,000 Australian, which is about 44,000 American, or nearly 1 million pesos, as a reward for information leading to Tahnee's safe return. Sadly, at this point, I don't think any amount of money will bring that about. At least Addie is now safe with her extended family in Australia. Let me know what you think down below, and until next time, stay safe and stay careful.